Chair will recognize the member for Fox Hill at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Three, I hope, brief interventions. The first is I wish to repeat the following in this House with regard to the homicide which occurred following a fight on Wednesday, the 9th December, outside the Doris Johnson Senior High School. An unspeakable tragedy has struck the Fox Hill constituency and community yet again. A child is dead. Other children are suspected in the killing. All of them are from families that care for them. All families are suffering. I join in the grieving for my constituents and the community of Fox Hill, and I extend my condolences to the family of the dead child and to the Doris Johnson School, the children, the teachers and staff, the principal, the school board. This is very sad. I will continue to use my best endeavors to keep the peace. Mr. Speaker, following that statement, I visited with all the public schools in the Fox Hill constituency, or that serve the Fox Hill constituency. The children involved in this matter, including the victim, all live in the Fox Hill area, if not the Fox Hill constituency. I've tried to see the parents and the teachers. You can imagine for Fox Hill what this means in the context of the shootings and killings in the last 2 years in this community. You'll recall on the 27th of December 2013, 4 people were shot dead on Freedom Park in Fox Hill awaiting Junkanoo results, and now the killing is extended from adults to children. I want, sir, to express my thanks to the Minister of Education, Director and his staff, the teachers and the headmasters, especially James Clark, who is the headmaster at Doris Johnson, for all they do to keep the peace in our schools and for training our children. I visited with Mr. Clark, spoke to his teachers, and then went to Samlin's Primary and to L.W. Young. In our constituency, as I suspect throughout the country, there's a profound re-examination and searching of what we can do to avoid this kind of tragedy from happening again. I have my own theories. Indeed, have been preaching this gospel since I returned home in 1986, when we could have foreseen the enormity of the issue that is coming down the road. Urgent action of some kind is needed, and one suspects that going forward, the society will respond to allocate the resources needed to tackle this problem. Speaker, at the request of the principal of St. Augustine's College, the nearby Catholic and therefore private school, I visited last week and happened to speak to them about what happened. Many children throughout the country were traumatized by the images of the fight and the subsequent death. In response, the postings on Facebook and Twitter were numerous. This is a different era, and deaths of this kind are often in your face and instant in all its full horror. Within minutes, the images are available on our phones and sent around the country and around the world. This tends to demean victims and to desensitize those of us who are left behind to the horrors of homicide and death in those circumstances. But the point I made to those young people is a point I wish to repeat this morning. As much as we are saddened, shocked, and traumatized by all the images, it would be unfair to blame them, all young people, as a generation. I do not blame them as a generation. There is no collective condemnation of young people. I told them that they should not see things in that way. Each individual in life has to accept responsibility for their own decisions and actions. Those who killed the young man are responsible for his death, not the generation of young people. In the meantime, I ask them to soldier on, to get the best education they can, continue to do the things that make for peace and build up the common life. It is that mission of doing the best they can, and in doing the things that make for peace and building up the common life, I am sure that the generation behind us have the support of each of the leaders of this country today. And I therefore extend my condolences to the mother and father of the deceased young man and to his wider family. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication be laid on the table. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Fox Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I want to update the House on matters arising concerning immigration since we last met that are of national interest. The House may recall that there was an allegation of abuse made by 2 representatives of the Bahamas Crisis Center about Jamaican women arrested by the police and detained. Those untested allegations, without hearing the other side, were published abroad, including in Jamaica. As a result of an inquiry by the Jamaican Foreign Minister, Senator A.J. Nicholson, I spoke to the Minister of National Security on Thursday, the 10th December, and then reported to the Jamaican Foreign Minister that I was not au fait with the facts, but undertook a review of the matter. I've since spoken with the Commissioner of Police, and the head of section of the Bahamas Ministry of Foreign Affairs that deals with human rights issues is continuing to review this matter and will in due course make its findings known to the government. Mr. Speaker, on this matter, I end by saying that we respect the Vienna Convention and the representatives of foreign governments in this country. The government does not condone abuse of any kind of detainees. It is always important, however, to hear the other side. I wish also to report the following. 3 Bahamian men, along with 15 Chinese nationals, were arrested in Bimini last Wednesday, the 9th December, after they were found by police on a vessel which they suspected was heading to Florida. They were brought to Nassau, and the Bahamian men have been charged with assisting an illegal departure. They were granted bail in the sum of $5,000 each with one surety. The case has been adjourned to the 7th of March 2016, and they are transferred to Bimini for trial. The 15 Chinese are scheduled to depart Nassau on the 14th of December for Cuba and then be repatriated to China. Secondly, sir, 30 Cuban nationals, all males, were landed at Grand Bahama late last evening by the U.S. Coast Guard. They were picked up on Key Sal. They are to be transferred to Nassau and returned to their home country. Thirdly, a pilot on the way to Exuma spotted what appears to be a Haitian vessel with migrants on board on the eastern side of Long Island. The Defense Force has been notified, and a vessel is being sent to investigate. Mr. Speaker, I bring this to the attention of the House to demonstrate yet again the seriousness of the problem that we face with regard to illegal migration. It is a relentless fight. Next, there's been a press statement, a press fuss recently over comments made by a prominent QC about flogging illegal migrants. It seems to me that this story, which has taken on a life of its own, largely created by the press to sell newspapers, needs to be diffused. Having created the story, they then demand that the government denounce the individual for what he said because the individual is a member of the Progressive Liberal Party. Let me tell the public what the law is on this matter. Flogging is not a penalty that a court of the Bahamas can impose on illegal migrants to this country for illegal migration. That's the end of that. There is no proposal to make it such a penalty. The lawyer in question is a private citizen and is free to say what he wants to say and what his views are. That is not the position of the government, and it is wicked to try and conflate the two. I remind the country, however, that flogging is a penalty in the statute laws of the Bahamas. It is something that I opposed and fought against. I don't support it. It was removed in 1984 and returned by this Parliament in 1991 and has been since pronounced to be constitutional by the Privy Council. If you read the list of offenses, however, for which flogging can be imposed, nowhere does it say such a penalty can be imposed for illegal migration. Civil society is free to condemn who they wish for their views if they wish. The government enforces the law as it is. Finally, I wish to acknowledge that last Thursday, the 10th of December, was Human Rights Day, and I wish to repeat this government's commitment to human rights of all individuals throughout the world. We seek to uphold the standards of conduct, the highest standards of conduct in this area. We have an open society and conduct our affairs and the treatment of all individuals in that light. Yesterday, a statement issued by the Grand Bahama Human Rights Association in answer to the intervention in this House last week on the case of Matthew Sewell was made. In their statement, the spokesman for the organization called the remarks last week shockingly callous. Mr. Speaker, I take issue with that characterization. The exposition in this House last week were simple, unvarnished facts. The only thing that is shockingly callous is the inability of that organization to back away from the treachery, falsehoods, exaggerations, slander, libel, with no apology, that they're simply now trying to be clever by changing the subject. No amount of obfuscation can change the fact that what was said by their spokesman with regard to the case of Matthew Sewell was untrue and false. That is the only fact at issue in this matter. Another of their activists, using an expletive to describe me, then predicted that the man repatriated to his home country will be back. Mr. Speaker, That is precisely what I've been saying. Are these people working to undermine the laws of the Bahamas? I wish only to say that the man who's been repatriated to his home country has been placed on the restricted list. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. An order that the communication be laid on the table. Chair recognizes Honourable Member for Foxhill.
Since the intervention last week in this place, there was a further commentary in the press with regard to the election of Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Baroness Patricia Scotland, and the support given by the Bahamas. The criticism seems personally motivated and activated by some personal animus, the origins of which I know not. The substantive criticism, however, that is in supporting Baroness Scotland, the Foreign Minister has put CARICOM as an organization at risk. Mr. Speaker, this is obviously and patently false. CARICOM is an organization that remains at the core of regional interaction and common approaches around the world. While there have been stresses with regard to various choices, I have no doubt that CARICOM will continue to survive. I've often said that if it did not exist, it would have to be invented. We, as small countries, have to work together for the common benefit of our region. The recent climate change conference in Paris shows us the great value of CARICOM and common action. For the record, therefore, I wish to condemn the assertion. I repeat also that the support of the new Secretary General of the Commonwealth was, in my judgment, in the best interest of the Bahamas and the region. And further, I wish to report that the Prime Minister is likely to lead a delegation to the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in Belize in February. I wish only to conclude by congratulating the government of Dr. Ralph Gonzalez of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for their victory at the polls on the 9th of December. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member.